Take a look at a Tour de France race bike and it will seem like a spaceship. These hyper-fast machines look brilliant, but if you weighed one, you might be disappointed. Surely, a lighter bike is a faster bike. Then why do the pro bikes often weigh more than yours and mine? In this video, I'm going to tell you why weight doesn't always matter, well, at least for World Tour pros. The question of how much does a pro's bike weigh largely depends on the type of stage they're riding on a given day. For the faster, flatter stages, riders will opt for their aero bikes with deep carbon wheels, which is just what Mathieu van der Poel has done with his Canyon Aeroad. His bike features a fully integrated front end to smooth the airflow at the leading edge. Wheels come from Shimano in the form of the Dura Ace C50, a 50mm deep tubeless setup with Vittoria's latest Corsa Pro 28mm tyres. This might make the Dutchman more aerodynamic, but it comes with a weight penalty. His bike at 7.94 kilos misses the UCI's minimum weight limit by over a kilo. This was a theme that we saw repeated with the sprinters. Mark Cavendish's lovely Villiers Falante SLR was tuned for pure speed and came in at 7.76 kilos. Alexander Kristoff's Dare VSRU weighed 7.74 kilos. The bike features really deep DT Swiss wheels and a chunky one-piece front end. On stages that feature a lot of climbing, however, many riders will reach for slightly less aero bikes in an attempt to balance pure speed with low weight. Simon Clark's brand new Factor O2 Vamp is a very good example of just this. The frame has a few aero touches, such as the flat rear profile on the head tube and wide forks, but the priority for this bike will be to get Clark through the mountains. His bike weighed just 6.9 kilos when we got our hands on it, which is very close to the 6.8 kilo weight limit. All-rounder bikes such as this and the specialised Tarmac SL7 have become increasingly popular in the peloton over the past few years, leading to some brands to just offer one road race bike to their riders. Alright, so on a lot of stages, the pros are riding bikes that are really quite heavy. But why? The simple answer is aerodynamics. Flat and rolling stages of the Tour de France are ridden at such a speed that optimizing your bike, clothing and helmet and position to be as efficient as possible is paramount. This is all in an effort to push as few watts as possible, saving rider energy over the course of not just a single stage, but throughout the entire 3-week race. An aero bike's frame will feature deep tube shapes, with the frame designers attempting to manipulate the airflow, reducing drag. The bike will have an integrated front end to hide the brake hoses and gear wires out of the wind, and riders will use a deep set of carbon wheels to maximise their efficiency. Take the latest Trek Madone SLR for example. The entire frame is made from aggressive, truncated aerofoil tube shapes, and who could forget that great big hole in the seat tube, or ISOFlow, as Trek would probably prefer we call it. This all adds up to make dedicated aero bikes quite a bit heavier than you might expect. But it isn't just for flat and rolling stages that aero needs to be considered. When we spoke to aero experts at Swisside ahead of 2021's double Mont Ventoux stage, they claimed that the fastest bike setup for this stage is likely to be an aero bike with clincher or tubeless wheels and tyres, even if it weighs a kilo more. This may surprise you, given that the infamous Ventoux rises to nearly 2,000 metres above sea level, but there were 72 kilometres of rolling roads before the start of the first major climb, as well as plenty of fast descending to contend with as well. In addition, the first ascent of Ventoux took the longer, shallower way up, covering 22 kilometres at an average of 5%. With this coming midway through the stage, there were plenty of domestiques left to help set a high pace, making aero a serious consideration. Now in the end, Wout van Aert rocked up on his lightweight Cervelo R5 climbing bike with a vented helmet and opted for the classic jersey and shorts combination. But he still won the stage, because he's Wout van Aert. Cycling didn't really know that aero was a thing until the early 80s when Francesco Moser set a new hour record while riding disc wheels and using a skin suit. But despite the likes of Aubry and Boardman showing that you could go really fast if you were aero, the world of pro road racing largely ignored aero. Fleeting glimpses of the power of aero were seen. Most famously, Greg LeMond used triathlon bars to win the 1989 Tour de France by just 8 seconds over Laurent Fignon. Details matter. For years, cycling's mantra has instead been a light bike is a fast bike. And the reason for this is quite simple. Races such as the Tour de France ventured into the mountains in the early 1900s, and riders began to realise that weight mattered. After all, if you didn't lose great chunks of time on these brutal mountain passes, you stood a greater chance of winning. Until 1930, riders had to fix all of their own mechanicals. Outside assistance was banned, so reliability was key. But after this point, a rider's team could help them with a new wheel or bike should it be needed, so a bike's performance became more important. Throughout the middle of the century, professional teams developed and bike brands, such as Peugeot, looked to push their machines to customers via race wins, a sales tactic that is still in effect today. Steel reigned supreme for years, but the 80s and 90s saw new materials such as aluminium, titanium, and carbon fibre come to the fore. These materials could provide the same or greater stiffness levels at much lower weights, and as cycling had developed into a sport where maximising power to weight resulted in race wins, carbon quickly became the frame material of choice. As bikes became lighter through the adoption of composite materials, worries developed over the safety of some featherweight components and frames. In an attempt to prevent mechanical failures from causing crashes in races, cycling's governing body, the UCI, introduced a 6.8 kilo minimum weight limit for complete bikes in the year 2000. This has stuck around ever since, despite manufacturing techniques improving massively and there being repeated calls to amend the regulation. This weight limit does, to an extent, impact the bikes that you and I can buy and ride. Brands develop the majority of their road race bikes for pro racing. If the bike doesn't have to be built lighter than 6.8 kilos when fully built, why would you bother? Some models, such as the specialised Athos, buck current trends by focusing on stiffness to weight and handling. In today's market, the Athos is in the minority and is a throwback to how bike design used to be. The UCI has relaxed some key aero frame design rules recently though, so maybe the outdated weight limit is next on the list for reform. One consequence of a new lowered weight limit could be the return of rim brakes. If brands could give their riders the lightest possible machine with no weight limit to restrict them, then for the toughest mountain stages, the rider of the lightest bike would have a significant advantage. This bike might possibly feature rim brakes as they are lighter than disc brakes, but before rim brake fans can rejoice, we're not so sure. The industry has largely moved away from rim brakes, and there are disc brake bikes such as the specialised Athos that can be easily built down to the 5 kilo mark. As a result, we'd say that a return of rim brakes is unlikely. With all of that considered, you might still be scratching your head as to why the pros don't just ride the 6.8 kilo bikes all of the time. The simple answer is that those heavier aero bikes are faster for what makes up the majority of a 3-week race. That is, riding through the endless rolling countryside of France. Unless you're riding the toughest mountain stages, weight just doesn't matter as much as aerodynamics. And with speeds being so high, we just don't see that changing. So, will this make any difference to your views on race bike weight? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe for more, and if you want to know if aero or lightweight wheels are faster, click on this video.